Thank you very much for the introduction and welcoming to the meeting. Today, my colleague BJ and I will share with you some aspect of our new review paradigm of conducting process and facility assessments. I will start with some high-level description of our organization, review team composition, our mission and vision. And Brian will give you some more detailed description of our previous and current review process for the process and the facility. And the presentation will be ended with 2 case studies which will be shared between Brian and me. I'm sure some of the slides you probably have seen it more than one time during our presentation, so just please bear with me. The first slide is our Center Director Jane Woodcock's remark. 21st century initiatives, basically the CDER's vision is a maximally effective, agile, flexible pharmaceutical manufacturing sector that reliably produce high-quality drugs without extensive regulatory oversight. Basically, drug industry require regulation. Without regulation, the quality cannot be ensured. However, we cannot over-regulate. If you regulate everything to death, there will be no drug. So we have to reach a balance with the effort between the agency and the industry. Under CDER, we have an office called Office of Pharmaceutical Quality, OPQ. And this is the office all the CMC are reviewed. The office is a single unit dedicated to product quality across all drug product, new drug, generic, OTC, and all manufacturing sites, foreign and domestic. It also includes all the review cycles, starting from IND, NDA, ANDA, supplements, OTC, etc. Alignments of the drug quality functions at the CDER include assessment, inspection, surveillance, policy, and the research. So under OPQ, in the second slide, I will show you we have several offices with dedicated missions, including review, inspection, surveillance, policy, formation, etc. OPQ is an integrated quality assessment unit. And we are trying to streamline regulatory process, advance regulatory standards, align areas of expertise, and originate surveillance of a drug product quality. This is basically after a drug product is approved. Either it's a new drug or a generic. This is the structure of our office, OPQ, starting from immediate office, and we have an office of program and the regulatory operation. We call it OPRO. And this office is empowered to conduct all the external communications with pharmaceutical industries. So all the control correspondence, all the IR letter, deficiency letter, action letter, you will communicate with CDER through OPRO. We have Office of Policy and the Pharmaceutical Quality. Actually, I correct my remark. The control correspondence will go to OPPQ, Office of Policy and the Project Quality. OPRO is where we call it project management resides. They are the manager of any application review. For the review functions, we have several review offices. One is OBP, Office of Biotechnology product. This office review like peptides, nucleoside, these are biopharmaceuticals. We have Office of a New Drug Product, ONDP. This is office review all the new drugs, starting from IND, DMF, which is the drug substance, and the drug product. We have, and this office also review DMF submitted by generic industry. We have Office of a Life Cycle Drug Product. This is the office review all the ANDAs and us. We have Office of a Process and a Facility. That's Brian, BJ, and me belong to. we review manufacturing process, and we evaluate manufacturing facilities. We decide whether a prior approval inspection will be recommended, and we will review the final outcome of the inspection and make the final recommendation whether the facility is acceptable to support the ANDA or NDA. Also, we have Office of Surveillance. This is the office basically profile an establishment and decide when to conduct a surveillance GMP inspection. We have Office of Testing and Research. These are our in-house R&D office. They have some cutting-edge equipment, and they conduct they promote, and the research conduct and promote new emergency technology and other aspects of the industry technologies. This slide shows the typical review team members involved in a NDA or ANDA review, including we have expert from in drug substance. This is sometimes submitted in the DMF. We have product design, biopharm. We have process facility is one office. We have microbiology. If it's a sterile product, we look at the sterility validation and the sterility control. For non-sterile product, they look at the microbial control, for example, solid or semi-solid, nasal spray, liquid, and how you control the microbial. So this is microbiology. Sometimes the process and the facility people share the review function of the microbiology for those non-sterile products. We have surveillance. I just talked about it. They will provide insight of the history of a site, GMP compliance. We have inspection. Those are the people actually evaluate the facilities, and if it's needed, they go to the site, working with the district office to conduct inspections. These slides basically illustrate the review team expert in several aspects. Drug substance basically it's a DMF review team. They review the DMF if the drug substance information is referenced by corporation of DMF, or the S section of the ANDA or NDA if it is not in the DMF. The product expert include drug product reviewer, biopharm, bioequivalent people. These are all evaluate the product aspect of the application. And then we have process people, we have a facility people. And then some people might start to worry, well, you have so many people, how you coordinate together to form a one voice communicating internally and externally. Well, that's why we have RBPM, we have ATL. ATL is application techno lead. This is the person who in charge of the entire application. He or she is empowered to collect all the IR deficiencies and make sure there's no overlapping, everything is appropriate, and we communicate through the ATL to the RBPM. RBPM will draft the communication letter and send out to the industry. This is the way we can ensure there's only one quality voice, even though we have many review disciplines and the reviewers. This is the mission, vision, and the core value of OPF. Basically, the Office of Process Facilities ensure that quality is built into the manufacturing processes and the facilities over the product life cycle. That's why we look at how you design the process, why you select the process, and what have you identified all the critical aspects of the manufacturing process, how you mitigate those processes, what is your scale-up strategy when you go to the commercial scale. And our vision is to be premier global regulatory organization for holistic assessment of a pharmaceutical manufacturing. We not only look at a certain segment of the manufacturing process, we look at the entire process both before approval and the post-approval. We look at the both process and the facility. Overall, we want to assess the quality control of the firm and for the particular process and the product. Our core value is working as a team, openly sharing knowledge and information in a timely manner, and partnering with internal and external organizations to achieve one quality voice. As one of the review member of the integrated review team, we constantly communicate with our partner like Lifecycle, Office of Lifecycle, OLDP, Office of New Drug, ONDP, our testing lab, and a district office. So we are in constant open communication to make sure the efficiency and the quality of our review. And I will handle the rest of the presentation to my colleague.
All right, thank you, Edwin. So hopefully we have a couple of repeat attendees from last year. I see a couple familiar faces, but if you came last year, you'll remember I gave a presentation fairly detailed about the facility assessment that we do for ANDAs, going into detail about how we pluck out your facility information, how we put it into a risk assessment and determine the need for a pre-approval inspection. We're not going to really do that today in this talk. We're kind of going to roll out an initiative that we're putting in place in OPF to integrate both the process review and the facility review. If you're looking for more detail on the facility review, that presentation is still available. It's on the website. You can go back to last year and look at it. Our colleague Chid also gave a presentation on the process review as well. But today we're just going to talk about how we're going to integrate the two reviews to hopefully be a little more efficient, cut down on some of the redundancy, and make it beneficial to not only our office, but to applicants as well. So let's start with what the process and what the facility review are. The process quality assessment examines the appropriateness of the design and the control strategy of the manufacturing process. The facility review examines the implementation of these controls and evaluates quality systems at the proposed manufacturing facilities. So the facility review is looking at the control strategy and those facilities' ability to implement that over the life cycle of the product. So taken together, those two, the process and the facility review, provide a pretty comprehensive assessment of the proposed commercial operations. So traditionally, what the process review was to evaluate whether the manufacturing process is understood, developed, and adequately controlled by the applicant. So how do they do that? Well, they're going to take the product and process-specific risk factors, make sure that what's identified as low risk is really truly low risk. What's high risk is adequately mitigated through appropriate studies. They're going to look at the commercial scale process parameters, that they're justified by your development data and your scale-up strategy. They're going to look at what you identified as critical in-process controls and that you've implemented adequate specifications with those. And ultimately, they're going to look at your manufacturing capability demonstrated by your exhibit batches and what you're proposing in your commercial master batch records. So typically, process reviewers communicate externally through IRs to the applicant, and internally they communicate to the facility reviewer through emails, TCONs, phone calls. We also have something called KTMs, knowledge transfer memos. Basically, if we know there's going to be a pre-approval inspection, and the facility reviewer is typically the one that handles that, the facility reviewer would reach out to the process reviewer and the rest of the review team, ask if there's anything that they want to specifically follow up with on site. And if it's a simple request, it might happen through an email. But if it's more detailed, we'll issue what's called a knowledge transfer memo. So what a facility reviewer typically does is they're going to determine the need for a pre-approval inspection. And how are they going to do that? They're going to look at the facilities that you've identified in your application, We're going to look at the compliance history and any residual risk as it relates back to the product that you're proposing. But we're also going to understand that, we need to understand the process that you are proposing as well. So that's kind of where the redundancy happens in our reviews, is the facility reviewer has to look at the process too, along with the process reviewer. Facility reviewers typically, if warranted, will participate on the pre-approval inspection. They're going to look at the 3 objectives of the compliance program. Again, we have lots of talks in this forum and other forums that are available on the website about the pre-approval inspection, but they're basically looking for your readiness for commercial operations, conformance to the application, and they're going to do an audit of the raw data that you submitted into the application. Facility reviewers typically communicate externally to the inspected facilities through both, if they're going on site during the pre-approval inspection, in a written communication through 483s if there's product-specific findings, through RAI letters or requests for additional information letters, which are generally a extension of the inspections to acquire more information after the inspection's over if we need to clear up a couple more issues. Internally, we communicate to the process reviewers through emails, TCONs. If we join the inspection, we'll be responsible for a section of the EIR narrative, and then we'll disseminate that out to the rest of the review team. So the efficiency that we're trying to build into the review process is to have one OPF assessor, one quality assessor that will do both the process and the facility assessment and participate on the pre-approval inspection if warranted. So they're going to conduct a one-time risk assessment on the identified facilities and the proposed commercial process. So again, this is going to increase accuracy and avoid redundancy amongst reviewers. So typically the process reviewer would be looking at the process, but the facility reviewer has to look at the process as well to understand how it's going to be implemented into the facility. So having one person do it will decrease that. This OPF assessor will also determine the need for a PAI after a detailed and holistic risk assessment at the early stages in the review cycle, and evaluate process and product specific risks and mitigations with the knowledge of the GMP compliance and manufacturing history. So having those both up front, both process knowledge and facility knowledge, you're kind of armed early on for the need to do a pre-approval inspection. This could potentially decrease, one of the benefits is it could potentially decrease late cycle pre-approval requests if something were to be found later on in the process review. That would come to the facility reviewer as a flag, and then maybe we wouldn't have time with the review clock to get the pre-approval inspection done. And then obviously going down to one reviewer streamlines the communication from both process and the facility standpoint to go out to the rest of the review team. Some of the benefits of an OPF assessor participating on a pre-approval inspection is a better understanding of the manufacturing process and potentially reducing the amount of IRs. If we know there's going to be a pre-approval inspection, some of the IRs might hold off until we're on site where we can clear up some issues. Effective inspection and full knowledge of the process and product specific risks. So hopefully by the time the pre-approval is scheduled and happens, the good majority of the process review is complete, so we understand the process and any issues that might arise. Real-time communication with the applicant with clarity on both the review and inspectional issues. Again, we don't have one person that's involved with the inspection as the facility reviewer going back to the process reviewer to try to clear up the issues. It's just one person and streamlining the communication. So we have a couple case studies. I'm going to do the first one. Edwin will take on the second one. So this is just kind of an example of one of the benefits we've seen integrating the review to where we can determine the need for a pre-approval up front in the review cycle and get it scheduled. So in this case, it was a lyophilized drug product. So in the initial facility assessment, the reviewer kind of noticed the most recent inspection Lyophilization wasn't covered. That's not necessarily a bad thing. They might have had other product profiles. It just wasn't covered in that one. But looking back a little more in the facility's history, they noticed a lyo product with a similar process was covered a couple years prior in under a PAI, and there was numerous issues with that product, not only the lyo process, but some of the other issues with the product, and they issued 483 specific to that. So in the traditional approach, that reviewer, that might not reach the baseline yet to go for a pre-approval, because you could mitigate those down. A reviewer could go and look at the responses to the 483s. They could look up that ANDA that was covered under the pre-approval and see if those were taken care of. So that facility reviewer in the traditional way could go back to the process reviewer and say, hey, look, I've had a couple of concerns, and that came about in the review of the facilities. What do you think about this? Well, the facility reviewer might be on a different timeline with that ANDA. They have other workload priorities. So it could be a couple of weeks before they get an answer back. And in the integrated approach, the facility assessment is done by the process reviewer. So they can go right into the process assessment and start looking. Maybe they'll target some things to do with the lyo process. And that's what they did in this case. And lo and behold, they found no development data to support the lyo process. They assigned inappropriate lyo process parameters and inadequate in-process controls for the lyo process. So that triggered a pre-approval inspection right off the bat, instead of waiting for the process reviewer to come back with their information, and it kind of streamlines the process. Case study number 2. Edwin?
Okay, thank you, Jay. The second case is a control-released tablet. This is by design is an ophthalmic pump. Normally, drug substance and the excipients are inside the core. There's a coating, and there's a tiny hole on the tablet. During the time, by absorbing the water, the API will be pumped out, and therefore control is released. During the review, the reviewer observed a lack of control of the hole depth. Think about it. In order to control precisely how much API will get pumped out of the tablet, the hole is very critical, which including the diameter, how big is the hole, and the depth of the hole. Right? And otherwise, you don't have a control for the release. So the reviewer find out there's no control for the hole depth. During the laser drilling, normally these were drilled by laser. And of course, like any operations, you can control either the endpoint, if you can measure the endpoint, like I control the thickness of the laser beam, I control the power, the duration, or you measure the actual depth. So either way, you have to control, either control through the operation parameter or endpoint. In this case, the applicant does not provide anything about this kind of control. And if it's in the traditional review paradigm, the reviewer will send IR. We observe that you lack of control in the whole depth, and provide your explanation why you don't do it, or justification, or you probably should implement some kind of a control. So the IR will be sent out after we collect all the IR from all disciplines, send it out maybe during the mid-cycle review. We wait for 30 days. The IR response will come back. We will review the response. If we are happy, then that'd be great. If there's still some question, another round of IR will be sent out. So it's a lengthy review process. However, this particular reviewer, he actually participated in the inspection. So he went to the firm. And at the firm, the management indicated that actually they agree these, they do not control the actual geometrical depths of the hole. Instead, they control the laser power and the duration. And they consider laser power is critical, but somehow they are not monitored and recorded. If you are not monitored and recorded, if you know something right in your SOP or master batch record, then the control is not there. So the mitigation is quick. They acknowledge their deficiencies. They are willing to control it, and they will modify the P3 section to add the power control. So if the laser beam diameter is fixed, you control the power and the duration, your depth is controlled. Right? So The whole thing it was done before, but at the end of the inspection, which is more or less 1 week, P3 is revised. They send amendment to the review division to amend the P3. Remember, this is NDA. For the NDA, we do not require master batch record. For the ANDA, you have to revise a master batch record. Right? But this is NDA. You can either give me a very detailed P3 or master batch record. So in this case, they revise the P3, send amendment, the reviewer look at it, satisfactory, done. So this just emphasizes what BJ says. This integrated review process really enhance our review efficiency and correct any observed deficiency in real short time.